Have you ever wondered what lies beyond what our naked eyes can see? The world around us is full of intricate details, patterns, and structures that are invisible to us without the aid of technology. The microscope is a perfect example of a device that has changed the way we think about small things. Under its lenses, you can see all kinds of amazing things, from the patterns on butterfly wings to the tiny beings that make up our world. Here are 15 amazing things you can see under a microscope. But before that, subscribe to our channel now. And if you love watching these amazing things, and hit the bell icon for regular updates. Let's get going to the video. Number 15. Beach sand. You might be shocked to find out that beach sand is fascinating to look at through a microscope. At first glance, it might look like a simple and familiar sight, but when you look closer, you'll see a world of shapes, colors, and textures that is mesmerizing. When you look at beach sand through a microscope, it looks like a beautiful mosaic of tiny pieces. They come to life and show complex patterns and designs that are truly amazing. Number 14. Chalk. Even though chalk seems simple, it is a complex substance with an interesting history. All of the world's limestone stocks come from the Cretaceous period, which was 99 to 65 million years ago and was when dinosaurs lived. During this relatively calm time, when the ocean floor didn't change much in some places, tiny creatures with calcite shells died and piled up on top of each other for millions of years. Because of this, the calcite got smaller and smaller over time, until it was the only form of limestone. When you look at chalk through a microscope, you can see this past because the chalk is like a marine graveyard where the bones of each animal are still visible. Number 13. Pond water. Under a microscope, you can look at pond water and have an adventure like anybody else has. It's like finding a tiny garden full of living things. With just a simple lens, you can look closely at these tiny creatures and see how they are made. You'll be amazed by how these tiny creatures have symmetry, shapes, and patterns. Each type of organism, from ciliated protozoans to green algae, has its unique traits and quirks, and they live in complex colonies that look like small towns. Number 12. Fingernail clippings. Under a microscope, a nail cutting can look like a small piece of serrated glass, which can be very interesting to look at. Think about how enjoyable it will be to see the unique patterns and ridges on your nails, which you wouldn't normally notice in everyday life. So the next time you find yourself biting your nails, save the pieces and look at them more closely. It might be the key to getting rid of this bad habit for good. Number 11. Fish scales. Have you ever looked at fish scales up close? Under a lens, you can see that a tree's growth rings look like a collection of fingerprints. These growth rings can be used to figure out how old the fish is. Fish scales grow in a pattern that can be used to figure out how old the fish is, just like the rings on a tree trunk. Number 10. Kosher salt. Salt may not seem like a very interesting substance at first glance, but it's a lot more interesting when you look at it under a microscope. For example, kosher salt, which is also called cooking salt or rock salt, is surprising because it's much coarser than table salt and doesn't have nearly as many additives. Instead, it will either be flat and plate-like, or, if it was made by evaporating salty water, it will have hollow pyramid-shaped crystals. Number 9. Soap bubbles. As you move the slide and look at the soap bubbles through a microscope, you'll notice that the colors seem to shift and change. This is because when the light goes through the film, some colors get brighter and others seem to go away. This creates a colorful pattern that will catch your eye. It's like looking at a small light show, and each bubble has its colors and movements. Number 8. Toothbrush bristles. If you use your toothbrush often, it can pick up germs, plaque, and other things from your mouth. If you looked at this through a microscope, you might see things you don't want to see. But before you throw away your toothbrush, it's important to know that you can clean and cleanse it to make it safe to use again. But if you want to see how a toothbrush looks under a microscope, you should use a brand new one. Number 7. Onion skin. The easy-to-peel, see-through skin of an onion is an easy topic to talk about that won't make you cry. Because each cell has a cell wall, they all look the same when you look at them through a microscope. If you dye the skin of an onion, you can also see the center of the cell. If your kids are interested in science and want to learn about how cells work, onion skin is a great thing to put under a microscope. Number 6. Pollen. Pollen is made by a plant's stamens and bees, and the wind carry it to other plants so they can reproduce. 2 cells are wrapped in a hard shell around a single pollen grain. Pollen can look like pale, fine dust, but when you look at it through a microscope, it may have an odd shape and a rough surface. Depending on the plant that made the pollen, it can almost look like beautiful, rare stones. Number 5. Digger wasp. Digger wasps are a fascinating group of wasps that do things a little differently than their counterparts. When you look at them under a microscope, you can see how complicated they are. They have 3 main eyes and a triangular shape that let them see things the way we do. They also have a series of smaller eyes that respond to changes in brightness and can quickly pick up on movement to help the wasp hunt or get away from a possible predator. Number 4. Eggshell membrane. If you've ever broken an egg, you've probably seen the thin film that covers the inside of the shell. This is a coating that keeps germs from getting into the egg. It is very strong and made partly of keratin. Keratin is the same protein that is in hair. When you look at a web of keratin fibers through a microscope, it looks like strands of hair. Number 3. Cheek cells. Every day your tongue touches the inside of your mouth, but we never really think about it. When we talk, smile, or chew, our lips are always busy, and the cells are constantly falling off, making them an easy thing to study. You can gently scrape the inside of the face with a cotton swab and spread the cells on a slide. It has a nucleus and a cell membrane that you can see. Number 2. Leaf. When you look closely at the details of nature, especially when you zoom in, you can see patterns and shapes that are both orderly and not. When you look at a leaf through a lens, it will look like beautiful abstract art. Sometimes the veins look like strange paths, and sometimes they look like tree roots. Look at the leaves of squash and see if you can find the cute little mushroom-shaped trichomes. Number 1. Snowed snow, when viewed via a microscope, reveals itself to be not only a stunning sight, but also an extremely interesting one. Researchers have discovered that snowflakes contain information about where they landed depending on the chemical composition of the water and the climatic conditions that existed at the time that the snowflakes fell. This information was uncovered using an electron microscope that has magnification capabilities of up to 1,000,000 times. Because of the unique process through which water is formed on Mars, even the snow that falls on the planet's polar caps looks remarkably distinct. Thank you for watching the video. If you really enjoyed it, then give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to catch our next video, which we planned for you. You've got only 5 seconds, so act fast and don't miss out.